Hello, folks. Were you able to hear my introduction?
No, sir. You're
Oh,
muted.
okay. I was on mute the whole time. Okay. All right. Well, I'll start from the top. It's good to be here. Thank you all for joining. I'm honored to have a chance to speak with you all today. My name is Jay Rogan McPherson, as introduced. Today, I'm going to talk to you all a little bit about my journey, starting from when I graduated college through some of the various roles I've had leading up into 2023, where I most recently worked at Google. And so the goal here is to help you all understand the variety of different roles you can hold, given the degrees and computer related degrees that you guys are getting, and answer some questions for you that will hopefully help you direct and navigate your own journeys as you enter the workforce. So if everyone can see my screen, I'm going to start by taking you through kind of a timeline of my professional career, and then I'll open it up to questions and just answer whatever it is you all want to know. So if someone can drop in the chat, are you able to see my screen? Or you can come off mute as well. Okay,
Yes, we're seeing your screen.
perfect, perfect. All right. Okay, so just at a high level, when I talk about my career trajectory, I went to school at Georgia State University here in Atlanta, Georgia, where I was born and raised. I'll talk a little bit about my journey there, the degree and program that I was in. Um, right after leaving college, I took a role at a company called Equifax, which over here stateside is one of three credit bureaus and information technology companies. From there, I left and joined a company called Marketo in the marketing technology space. And I spent a couple of years there, and then went back into another role very similar to my role at Equifax. And again, I'll dive into the details here in a bit. But I went to a company called LexisNexis, which is essentially an information broker here stateside. From LexisNexis, I joined Google in their cloud division, working as a customer engineer in our public sector group. So I was working with a number of government agencies over here stateside. And over the last, I'd say 1.5 to 2 years, most recently, I transferred into working within Google Labs, which is an area of Google that focuses on new product innovation and development from 0 to 1. So, the way that I can describe that is if you think of Google products that you all probably know and use, like YouTube, Gmail, that sort of thing, those are more mature and established products that go through iterations where they would release different feature sets. In my organization, I worked on pitching products that did not exist yet, right? So I would come in with an idea, say, here's the product that we need to build, and then would give me money to go and build a team.
I'll look into it.
So that is a little bit about my career trajectory, but I want to take you back to my experience when I was an undergrad student at Georgia State, because I think that may be helpful to you all to frame this up. So I actually started at Georgia State as an art major of all things. So I'm very good at drawing, 2D design, and going into school, I thought that I was going to be a graphic designer or an illustrator or something of that sort. So I think one of the first lessons I can probably share with you today is that where you start may not be where you end up, right? So came into school thinking art was going to be the thing that I did, spent probably, I'd say, 2.5 years in art school at Georgia State University before switching my major to computer information systems. And so another lesson that I would like to share with you all that I have to be careful in how I communicate and articulate this, but um, grades are not necessarily everything, right? So I encourage all of you. I know you're all bright and smart and striving to get, the highest marks in class. But for those of you who may be struggling or um, less focused on that than others, just understand that there is potentially a bright path for you as well if you play your cards right, right? So in my story, in going through art school, I actually wasn't doing very well, right? I didn't take school very seriously when I came into undergrad. I did a lot of partying and all that sort of stuff that kids do when they're away from their parents over here in the States. And needless to say, by not going to class, by not taking final exams, when it came time for me to actually graduate, I did not have the best of GPAs, right? I didn't really start taking school seriously until probably about my junior year, right? And so it actually took me 6 years to get my undergrad degree just because of the switching and having to retake classes that I didn't do well in. But the end of the story ended up well because I ended up at some really good companies doing some really cool stuff, right? But I would encourage folks to focus on not only making sure you're staying on top of your academic studies, but also working on side projects that are of interest to you outside of the coursework that you're mandated to do by your professors, right? So for me, I know that was kind of key in me getting interest from companies once I'd graduated, given I didn't finish with a GPA that was on par with some of the top academic students, if you will. Right? That's important. The last thing I'll say about my journey as an undergrad, I made a very interesting decision when I moved out of art school to get a degree in computer information systems, right? And so stateside in computer information systems, it's different from computer science. And so, when you think about computer science, you typically think about, many computer engineering related disciplines, algorithms, data structures, some math and physics as well. The degree that I actually went and ascertained was not a science degree. It was actually a business degree. I think in the past they've called it management information systems or computer information systems. And so the way that program works, if any of you are enrolled or interested in that type of program, you take a foundation of business classes, right? So I did things like finance, marketing, business, or business law, if you will. And those replace your core mathematics classes, right? And then when you get into the later courses, then you take more of the software engineering and architecture, database technology and design type courses that you layer on top of your business courses, right? And so I serve that up to you all because it's an important lesson that computer science is not the only path into a technology career, right? So in many cases, it is beneficial for you to have both a strong technical acumen as well as a strong business acumen. And in fact, when I joined my first company at Equifax, given I kind of had a dual understanding of the business side of things as well as the engineering and technical side of things, my first boss actually he asked me whether in my career I wanted to focus on a more technical track or on a more functional track, right? And he said, "Hey, Jay Roby, you have the skill set where you can go either direction, right? And I'm not going to sway you to go one way or sway you to go another way. But, if you're wondering, I've seen that it is much easier to advance on the functional or business side of things compared to the technical side of things, right? And so his recommendation to me was to focus on, more functional, non-technical tracks if career growth and development was a thing that I was looking for. So just a thought for you all there as you think about what your career trajectory may look like. In my own experience, my feedback to you all would be if you feel you are cream of the crop when it comes to engineering and technical acumen, then by all means, if that's your interest, stay there. But understand that going a more technical track, you will be competing with folks that are also, very technical and engineering minded. So if you level it all together, if you are going against folks that are very technical and you're very technical, then you may come out on top. If you are going against folks that are not technical and you're just a little bit technical, it's going to be a lot easier to move up in your career. And so throughout my journey, I tried to maintain a good balance of business and technical skill sets. So that's a little bit about my background in school. I am open to sharing a little bit more about some of the roles that I had after school, but I guess before I jump into that, I'd love to open it up to any thoughts, questions, or comments. Does anyone have any preliminary questions for me or anything you want me to? Percival, I see a hand raised.
A good day, sir. Good day. So, at the beginning, you mentioned that you initially started an art school. It's an art school because you liked graphics and those type of stuff. So my question to you really is, what made you decide to switch over to computer information systems after that?
Yeah, that's a great question. Great question. There's a good story there, right? So, I guess just to sum it up succinctly, and then I'll go into more details as necessary. About a couple years into art school, I realized that you really don't need a degree to be an artist, right? Whether you're talking about somebody that is striving to become a painter or a graphic designer or any of those things really, right? Like the art world, at least from my experience, really operated on the premise and the basis of your portfolio work, right? And so, I kind of had this epiphany where I said, hey, if I want to be an artist, I just need to focus on producing good art, and the opportunities will arise in that domain, right? So I felt that it was much more strategic to go and get a degree in something related to computer science, computer information systems as a fallback, because those are things where you most certainly will need a degree to get interest for employment, right? And so I said, hey, let me go get a degree in something that is of interest to me and that will always be able to provide me job opportunities. And should I want to pursue art as a career, then I will just focus on putting together a good portfolio. The last thing I'll say about that transition for me as well is I actually got into computer related engineering type disciplines through art, right? So, back when I was in high school, excuse me, now you have TikTok and Instagram and all that, but it was MySpace back then, right? And so, if anyone remembers MySpace or heard about it, it was like a social media platform where you could put all sorts of things about your life and connect with friends. And they had functionality where if you were technically savvy, you could go and do things like play with the HTML and CSS on the profile page and customize your profile, right? And so I got into doing that, learned HTML and CSS in high school. That quickly progressed to me learning JavaScript, right, which actually helped me manipulate things on the page in a more interactive way, as opposed to just statically defining how something looked. And then as I kind of progressed there, I was like, hey, now I actually want to do more advanced development and store some information. So I started beginning to learn about databases and some, I guess, more powerful backend programming languages instead of the front end languages, and learn PHP. And from there, I just kept layering on top of my engineering and software development knowledge to the point where when I did make that transition from art school to computer information systems, I already had a very strong self-taught base and foundation of which to make the technical courses that I was taking formally easier to digest, right? So, which is another tip too, right? So, for those of you who are not self-taught or have not transitioned into, computer science or related courses, I would encourage you all to just do some exploration on your own and start building some things. So, I know that was long-winded, but hopefully that answered your question. Cool. Any other questions before I move on? Okay. Oh, Is it Tavar?
Yes, it's far. Okay,
Tavar?
earlier, yeah, are you hearing me clearly?
Yeah, it broke up a little. I can hear you now.
Okay, earlier mentioned about the computer science degree in terms of you getting a job there is kind of like difficult because you have so much competition. What's the competition like in terms of information system?
Yeah, so that's a good question too, right? And so typically with computer information systems, you will, like, let me put it this way, let me break it down this way, right? So when you come out with a computer science degree, you're typically going to be competing against, folks that are going for like software engineering or data science, the very, very tech heavy roles within tech, right? Versus computer information systems, with that degree, you see a lot more of folks that are like technical business analysts or IT project managers, right? In some cases, you'll see folks that may not be software engineers, but maybe like database administrators, right? So, and I think that's an important question because there are a whole range of different career paths in technology, right, that you can go for. And I feel like for a lot of undergrad folks that I talked to, and even when I was an undergrad, a lot of folks thought it was just software engineering, right? And that's totally not the case. If you go to any technology company, you'll see a whole slew of different positions, right? And so I guess to actually transition that into fast forwarding through my career trajectory, I'll just name a few of the titles and positions that I've had. Um, and hopefully paint you a picture of some of the things that you could do, right? So when I joined Equifax, I joined as what they called a professional services architect. And so in layman terms, what that was I was an implementation consultant. So at Equifax, we had a professional services division. And professional services is a term that you'll hear when a company has its own consultant organization within the company, right? And so, stateside, you have a lot of very big consulting firms, folks like Accenture and Deloitte, those types of folks, where their whole business model is providing advisory and consulting services to their clients. Now, you have companies that are not themselves consulting companies. Like I said, Equifax was a credit bureau that I worked for, but they have a consultancy arm, and typically that's called professional services. And so that's the group that I worked in, where we'd have customers that came to us and said, for me specifically, I worked in the identity and fraud domain. So we would have folks that would come to us and say, hey, Equifax, you have this software where you can identify, consumers' fraud risk, right? We want to buy that software from you. And in buying that software from you, to implement it for our use case, we will need help doing that. And the professional services team was a team that would come in and help them install, manage, and run that software solution that Equifax was offering, right? And so that's very important to keep in mind because within that role or within that organization, you would have folks that were software engineers to help write code to integrate our customers' software with our software. You had project managers where they were not developers or software engineers by any means, but they had to understand the software development lifecycle and how to essentially distribute work amongst the various folks that were going to be implementing the software. You had system administrative people. You had business analysts. Business analysts would just come and work with the product managers and really figure out what the scope and the business needs of the customer were, and tie that back to the engineering work that needed to get done. You'd also have quality assurance folks as well. And quality assurance folks were focused with testing the software. So there are a whole slew of different roles that I interacted with right out of school that kind of broadened my horizon on the different career paths you can take in tech. So following Equifax, I moved to a company called Marketo. And in Marketo, I did a very similar role, but this was on what they call the pre-sale side. So I essentially became what is kind of colloquially known as a sales engineer. And a sales engineer is essentially someone with a engineering mindset and technical acumen that works within a sales team, right? And so in this role, instead of actually working with clients to implement software that they purchase from my company, I was now sitting on the front lines with salespeople and trying to pitch and get potential clients to buy the software or solutions that we were selling, right? And so, my conversation would be with the CTO of a company or a CIO of a company or a director of security, so that as they were in a sales cycle with my company and they had technical questions, hey, what is the integration going to look like between your system and my system? What kind of security do you implement to make sure that the data that we provide to you is secure? How do I customize the system in a certain way? Those are the types of questions that I was responsible for answering, and in many cases demonstrating products as part of a sales engineering role, right? Which again is another role that's maybe lesser known to undergrad and folks, considering technical careers, but it's a very, very, very good career path to take if you're interested in learning the business side of things in addition to the technical side of things as well. And so I did that for the majority of my career through a couple of other companies. And then finally, when I came to Google, that's the same role that I took at Google, where I was doing that for Google's cloud platform, right? So talking to different organizations and explaining to them how our cloud platform works, all the way up and down the stack, from networking to security to application development, and essentially convincing folks to move their entire workloads into Google's cloud, right? And finally, most recently, I moved into product management, which is another option for those of you interested in kind of a hybrid business and technical role, right? Product management is all about creating things, right? So building products, you essentially act as like a little mini CEO. And if you're doing that within a software-oriented technology company like a Google or Facebook or something like that, then most of those folks come from engineering backgrounds, because it's very important to understand how to build in a scalable fashion a software system, even if you're not the one that's responsible for building it. So hopefully that gives you a little bit more intel as to some of the different roles that you can have based on my trajectory. But I would love to hear any questions or requests for me to clarify any of that as well.
Okay, I got it from that, sir. A next question though. You hear me right?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, what's your take on the online certificates? Like, what if you want to be, let's say, very marketable in the IT department? So you pursue a career, a degree in computer science, but you'd like to do something in information system. So you pursue like an online certificate from various websites. I know Google has one for data analysis, maybe more. What's your take on those certificates? Do they take you far? For example, you want to work at Google or maybe Apple or something. Those certificates, how far do they take you?
Yeah, that's a great question. Great question. And again, I'll try and try and articulate my response and thoughts succinctly, but it may sound kind of all over the place. So I guess I will lead with saying that we will, at least I will, and I've hired a bunch of folks and managed software engineers and did a bunch of interviews for Google and other companies and stuff, right? Experience trumps all, right? At the end of the day, especially at a company like a Google, right? Google is a company that doesn't really care about your certifications much, right? Like, you have companies that and this is where I have to be careful how I respond. You have companies that will want to see some of those certificates and certifications, and that may be a requirement, to work at the company, because that's how they screen out their candidates. But I think at some of the larger like FANG companies, that actually is not a thing, right? But I would say it's not a thing because at a company like Google, we were trained very well to disseminate whether or not someone knows what they're talking about or not, right? And so if you think of kind of a certification, typically, or even just your diploma coming from school, it basically is a signal to someone that's interested in you that you have ascertained some level of understanding in the domain that you have the certificate in, right? But I have to caution you because I see a lot of folks that go after these certifications that don't necessarily really have a good understanding of the material, and they think they can get by just saying, hey, I have this certification, right? If you come to a company like Google, they will quickly weed that out, right? So, again, it's a company where you have folks, you can throw a quarter out the window and hit someone with a PhD, or an MBA. And then you have folks like myself who, didn't even have a great GPA coming out of school. That is because they will see through your certificates, they will see through your degrees, and they will really drill into whether or not you know what you're talking about, right? At other companies, that's not really the case. The other thing that I'll say about the certification question is, on the contrary, there are some positions, I think, horizontally across different organizations where it is critical to have certain certifications, right? And so an example I'll give is one of the certifications that I had, and I'll talk to you about why I even have certifications given what I just said. But one of the certifications I had previously was called the CISP. The CISP is a Certified Information Security Systems Professional, right? So it is a certificate that is essentially required for any job that you want to get in security that has like a information security management spin on it, right? And so, if you wanted to get into security policy, procedure design, or anything like that, most of the roles will require that you have a CISP, right? And so that's an example where for that specific thing, yeah, maybe it makes sense to get that certification. Going back to some of the other certifications that I have, you mentioned, Google has a few. I have the Google Professional Cloud Architect certification, as well as the Professional Data Engineering certification. Now, to clarify, going back to what I said earlier, Google didn't look at me and say, oh, Jay Roby has these certifications, he's a good hire, right? As a matter of fact, I didn't even get those certifications until after I worked at Google. And it was once I worked there that I got those. And so my approach to certifications is, I would say get them if you're the type of person that benefits from a very structured approach to diving deep into a particular domain, right? Said another way, get them if it's going to help you learn. Don't get them because you think an employer is going to be interested in those certifications and hire you because of it, right? So my philosophy is, for instance, when I did the CISP, I had no desire to go work in security. I just had a very, I guess, curious attitude towards, the different subdomains of security. And I said to myself, a good way to brush up on these skills is to go to get the certification. So I went and got it. The same thing for the cloud stuff. I was interested in it, went and got the certifications, and it helped me, right? But by no means that I come to me and say, oh, hey, we're really impressed that you have this certification. We're going to hire you because of it, right? It's more about, okay, well, tell me about the difference between some of these coursework with the certification, help me get an interview. So again, long in a way of saying, if they're your thing, get them, but don't lean on them too heavily. Quick, do we have a few minutes left for a couple more questions? I guess I'll take that as a yes or no.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
that's correct.
Okay, great, great.
Yeah, yes, sir. Sir, I have a question in regards to comic. I'm interested in while I'm doing the animation course, I do have a particular interest or partiality towards comics or graphical image storytelling. And what my question is, how if I were to leave university graduating as a freshman, how would I be able to look for and publish myself and publish comics myself in attempt to start earning income? That's my trying to ask.
Yeah, that's a good question, and I think there's a lot of different opportunities for you, right? So I'm not as familiar with like the comic publishing world, but from what I understand, at least like stateside, a lot of times, folks will come up with their comics and take them to like comic syndicate firms, right? Where essentially you pitch your comic to them and they pick it up, and if they like it, they distribute it. But I would encourage you to think of alternative ways and non-traditional ways to make money from your comics, or any other artwork or media for that matter, by fusing it in with maybe some of the stuff that you're learning, in college, in school, right? And so, you can think of things like self-publishing your comics to a website, or creating a mobile application where you distribute your comics to consumers that are interested in, right? So actually, a fun fact, I think it's still here up on the screen. When I worked in Google Labs most recently, again, that area of Google was all about new product innovation, right? And so building things that didn't exist yet that Google had an interest in exploring, right? Given the potential of it to blow up into something big, right? And so I give that background context because there was another team that worked in that same incubator with me, that they called like snack size comics, right? And so different uh, uh, short form comics and upload them to this platform and have them consumed by other folks, right? So you can kind of think of it as like it was essentially like an Instagram for short comics, right? And
So,
so yeah.
so what is what's the name of this particular mobile application app, and is its purpose solely to show credibility, or how should I market so that they have more opportunities for bigger games?
Yeah, so that's a good question too. And so for context, this was an internal project. So they released the application just to Google employees for starters. And unfortunately, they never got to finish the project, but I tried it out, when I was there, and it was pretty cool, right? But yeah, the idea was to provide a platform for, newer nascent comic creators to get their content out there in a way that was easily digestible to a lot of people, right? Where, and I believe, I don't know that they implemented this because they were still in the early stages, but I believe they were putting together a strategy for allowing the comic creators to monetize, right? Where I think they were talking about some system where, you could offer a subscription to your comics and have the viewers and the users of the mobile application actually pay to, I guess, see an expanded portfolio of your work in the comics, right? So, anyways, the point here is that I would definitely, if that's the direction that you want to take, um, just get creative on how you get your content out there to the world. There's a lot of opportunities. Uh, so yeah.
Okay, so thank you.
Yeah. And actually, one more thing I want to say before moving on to the next question is I know your question, AJ, was about comics, but for anyone else who is just more, I guess, design oriented and visual in nature, right? And you're looking for, hey, what are the types of roles that I could do where I could leverage my design acumen, more so than, maybe my hardcore engineering acumen. Another role that you all can look into is called user experience design, right? And so user experience design is kind of a body of roles that sit under a larger group of roles called user experience. And user experience is kind of what it sounds like, right? So, especially when you're working on a product team, at Google, we kind of instantiate what we call the product triad, where you have a product manager who is responsible for essentially creating the product, coming up with the idea, the concept, and making sure everything ties together. We also have a engineering lead. That's typically your lead software engineer that's responsible for the technical implementation. But then you have a user experience lead. And the user experience lead typically works with the product manager and the product team to make sure that the product that's being developed meets the needs and desires of the users that the product is supposed to be serving. And so that is from a just an experience in terms of a navigating the product aspect as well as from a visual and design aspect. And so typically in a UX team, you will have UX researchers, which are all about essentially talking to customers, talking to users, uh, really understanding a target audience, as well as user experience designers, which are the folks that kind of take all of that research and learnings from what the users actually want and lay it out in a design, whether it's a mock or front end design that can be handed off to the engineers to implement in the product, right? So I often find that folks that have like an art background or a more design oriented background enjoy roles adjacent to user experience design or research sometimes. Cool. All right. I know we're almost at top of the hour. Any other questions or things you want me to dive into?
Sir, in your experience in this day and age, and the reason why that is because historically, one of my inspirations for comics was Aaron Magruder and a few others and their
Yeah.
stories of how they became like they were able to have us gain a successful career by having their comic by creating comic strips that appeared in newspapers and daily sunny pages in
Yep.
America. And my question is that still a possibility in this day and age to be popular by doing several panel comic strips distributed in newspapers or online?
I think that kind of depends on who you ask, but I guess you're asking me. So here's my perspective. I would say less so. And by the way, I'm a big fan of Aaron Magruder, the Boondocks, all of that. I was an early reader of that comic, when it used to be published in the newspaper, right? But I think what is important to think of when answering that question is, and again, this may be different, given different locales and stuff, but at least stateside, I can't even remember the last time I saw a newspaper, right? So, we are now living in a digital world, right, where everything is accessible online. That is the way that people consume and seek out information, and so I would imagine, without doing a ton of research, that trying to do something that is related to comics is probably better done through a digital medium today than through a paper medium in the newspaper, right? But obviously that could be different depending on the popularity
I
of
I get what you're saying, sir.
Yeah.
Don't really use the paper.
yeah. But hey, if you have a market for it, then go for it. The last thing I'll say about that is, again, whether you're talking about comics or some other form of content, um, kind of the world is yours now. We live in such a open web ecosystem that there are a lot more opportunities to kind of bring your content to light on your own without having to rely on a third party distributor than ever before, right? So now more so than ever, you see folks that are starting their own YouTube channels and becoming popular and monetizing based off that, putting out their own ebooks. I would say don't wait for a large distributor, whether you have interest in music, comics, whatever it is. Find your audience and figure out how to connect with them digitally, and that's usually a winning proposition. All right, given that, I hope this has been helpful. I'm going to drop in my LinkedIn for anyone that wishes to connect with me. I'm always happy to talk to folks and mentor people. I'm going to sign off now and give some time to the next presenter, but really hope you all enjoyed this talk. And again, feel free to reach out to me if I can ever be helpful in your journeys. Thanks.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. McPherson. I know that was a really insightful presentation, and a lot of students will definitely be reaching out to you about all that you said. We really appreciate you coming to speak at our event today. Thank you, like genuinely from the bottom of my heart. Thank you. So at this point in time, I will allow our animation representative, Mr. Andre Clark, to introduce the animation speaker.
Okay, good day, people. For this event, I reached out and got into contact with a award-winning 2D animator, screenwriter, and film director. He's also president at the Jamaican Animation Nation Network. He has more than 15 years in the field. So I'd like to introduce you to Mr. Kevin Jackson.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes,
sir.
good afternoon.
All right,
Yes,
great.
sir.
Awesome. Yes, thank you for the introduction, Andre. So yeah, I've been in the business for roughly 15 years, and specifically in film for 15 years. Animation is probably about 11 or 12, thereabout. And it's an interesting journey because I got my first degree in computer science at the University of the West Indies. So I'll talk a little bit about that journey and how I transitioned into film and animation, and give you guys some insight as to how my degree helped me. So when just generally when growing up, I was always into art. In high school, I would draw comics and try to sell those comics, and always dreamed of working at Marvel or DC one day. But eventually, what ended up happening was the way society was structured back then, the way education was structured back then. While there was an art track, the notion was to try to convince people to do the sciences or to do business, and so on. And art was sort of something that you pushed people who were talented in art only and didn't have, you know, they weren't as academically achieved in the other areas, but they would tend to kind of push you towards the business or the science type subjects. And I did pretty well at the sciences, so I was pushed into the sciences. And you've very often heard that art doesn't make money, so that was the reason for pushing into the sciences. So art was something I had put down for a long time, and animation was never on my radar. I loved animation, loved film, but it was not something that I even understood was a job back then, much less to aspire to be an animator. I knew there were comic book artists because, I bought tons of comics and you can read and see the name of the artist and the name of etc. Yeah. With films and animation, yeah, you see the credits rolling, but a lot of the animations I used to watch, like Thundercats, G.I. Joes, Silverhawks, when you'd see those credit roll, you would see lots of Japanese names. And so, you kind of just got this impression like, oh, those people over there do it, that's not something that we can do. But anyway, scooting forward, going through university, I initially started doing electronics because I had it in mind that I wanted to be an inventor. I like gadgets. I wanted to, learn electronics to invent gadgets. But soon found that we were heading into an era where electronics was becoming more computer programming than tinkering with electronics, right? Yeah, you still had to have the electronic base, but it was becoming more computer programming than anything else because more and more the functionality of electronic components was moving towards chipsets that you actually program with code. And coding was something that I was very, very weak at. And I needed some extra subjects. So I decided, all right, I'm going to get into computer programming and started doing some computer programming courses and transitioned over into computer science, graduated with a computer science degree, and then started working, doing web development for a little bit at Mona Institute of Applied Sciences, and then moving on to, it's called eGov now, but back then it was called Fiscal Services. So doing some programming in a language called 4GL. I was really hoping to get on the Java team, but the Java team was kind of reserved for the more senior programmers. All the junior programmers started on this IBM language called 4GL. And then after that left and went to, I think it was Barita Portfolio, which is now BPM Financial, and we were programming a pension application, which, it wasn't exciting, but what was exciting about it was at the time, there were no pension applications in Jamaica. And so it was kind of just exciting to be working on something new and creating an application that this financial institution would use. Then eventually moving from that, I went working at another company as a database administrator. Now, I had 15 years of doing this programming experience. And the honest truth was I didn't enjoy it. I really, really did not enjoy it at all. Programming was not really my thing. And in fact, I got introduced to writing when I started working at Fiscal Services when I left university in 2003. And how I got introduced to it was the first 2 weeks of work, they didn't have anything for me to do. And there was an intern there who was equally as bored as me. And she was asking me to give her something to do, give her something to edit. If I don't have like something that I'm writing that she can edit. And I said, well, all right, you know what? I have this story that's been playing in my head. I'm going to write the story and give it to you to edit. And in those 2 weeks writing the story, it just got my juices flowing to express my imagination. And I was kind of remembering that I was an artist, and it's that the joy that brought kind of stuck with me throughout those 15 years programming. And I kind of felt this tug of war between, sticking with what I went to school for and pursuing what I really loved. Eventually, I chose to pursue what I really love when I was getting into film. volunteering on a lot of sets so that people could get to know me, because networking is extremely important in any field that you do. In fact, I would say networking is way more important than anything else, right? And I'll explain a little bit more about that in a bit. But what ended up happening to me was I started to just research film equipment, research how to shoot a film, etc. Went to film festivals, volunteered at film festivals, volunteered on people's sets. Eventually, I had gotten hired to work on America's Next Top Model in Cycle 19, which was about 12 years ago. And that was when things changed, because I realized that I had no problems getting up early in the morning to be on set, right? For 2 weeks straight, I had no problems getting up at 5 a.m., 4 a.m., 3 a.m. Whatever time they told me to get up, I would be up and I'd be energized, ready to work all day, didn't want to leave set. And I thought, no, man, this is what I like, this is what I want, right? When it came to programming, 9 a.m., 10 a.m., I don't want to get up to go and program. So I had given myself the ultimatum to say, all right, I need to cement myself in some way in the film industry before I hit 30. If I can't do that, then I'll stick with the programming. If I can do that, then I'm transitioning. And luckily enough, I did manage to transition. Some years later, I got introduced to animation when the JAMPRO and the Canadian High Commission, they had a conference where they were introducing animation. And not when I say introducing, meaning to the masses. Animation existed here before. We had Adrian Lopez doing animation from about 2002, Carota Singer. Disney had been here in the Disney, and I don't remember the name of the other company. UNICEF had been trying to start something in the 80s and 90s. So it had been trying to spark, but this was like the big, lighting of that wick that would continue the flame that continues today. And I thought it was a good opportunity to get back into art. And so I started to teach myself animation because there were no animation courses at the time, right? It's lovely to see that there's so many animation courses now. And I mean, I got the chance to actually see these animation courses come about. I was, there when a lot of these curriculums were being created and consulted on. So it was, amazing to see all of that. But yeah, I had to learn on my own. CPTC, I heard, had an animation course, but when I went there, they told me they no longer had it. So I had to learn animation on my own. And while learning it on my own, and this is where the degree becomes important. One of the things that I really, like, a lot of people, it's hard for them to learn animation on their own, especially the software, because sometimes the software can be very challenging. And being a programmer and understanding how software works, it wasn't so hard for me to grasp the software quickly, right? Because when you've programmed enough applications, you can almost feel the blueprint, in a sense, of the software. Like, you can almost feel the philosophy of the software. What were they going for when they were building the software? And so that made it much easier for me to get into animation. I think a lot of people quit because a lot of things in the software sometimes are not logical or not intuitive, but that helped me a lot. The other thing was the problem solving that computer programming gave me. I think the problem solving, that critical thinking, being logical, helped a lot, because in animation, you'll find it in your programs. When you're animating, I think most people have this impression that everything that you animate, there's a technique for it, right? And there are definitely techniques, but there are a lot of things that you will not find in a textbook, right? You'll see them in animation, you won't find them in a textbook, and you'll be wondering, how do I accomplish this? How do I accomplish this? And you're hoping that you can find somebody to tell you. And you can imagine back then, when not that many people were animating out here, you didn't have any animation programs. And even though, everything is on YouTube, back then everything wasn't on YouTube like how it is now, right? Like right now, everybody's creating content. So there's almost a tutorial for everything. Back then, all of the tutorials were the same thing: walk, cycle, bouncing ball, etc., etc. And you had to use that logical, problem solving skills that you develop in programming to not only figure out how to, arrive at these techniques, but even just problem solving in terms of like your software crashing or the animation itself, just giving you problems and figuring things out step by step and eliminating, certain variables and so on. Really, really helped in getting into animation. And it's funny how I got, to the point of actually earning money from animation. I would post everything that I learned on Facebook, right? So as soon as I learned the bouncing ball, I posted the results on Facebook. I wanted to learn how to make a character spin, posted the results on Facebook. Whatever I learned, posted it on Facebook. Didn't really think anybody was seeing it, but social media at the time was just the thing to do. So it was just posting. And then one day someone messaged me and said, hey, Jamaica Environment Trust, they need an animator for a project. And because I was learning at the time, I was saying, all right, I'll see if I can find somebody who can do the animation, because I didn't think I could. I thought that, hey, I'm still learning, so it really don't make sense I try to do it because I don't know what I'm doing. And the person was like, why don't you go up for the job? And I'm like, no, I'm just learning, etc. And he's like, well, why tell yourself no? Let them tell you no. If you don't meet the cut, they will let you know. But at least take the meeting and see what happens. And I thought, all right, that's actually good advice. Don't tell yourself no. Let them tell you no. So I said, fine. Went down there, showed them, the work I had been doing. And yeah, it was excellent advice. I live by that advice to this day. Like, I've never forgotten that advice. And I showed them my portfolio and I was nervous, sweating bullets, like sweating, because all I'm thinking is, because it's not like they was like, ooh, wow, they're just looking through, and I'm there sweating going, boy, they must think that this is horrible. But then they stopped on a few things and they go, oh, we like this style. We really would love if you could do the animation in, we are our greatest critics, Roshi. It's like, we'd love if you could do it in this style. And I was like, all right, cool. And then that's where the problems start, because now I'm like, ooh, wow, I get the job. Now I have to do the job. I don't even know how long it would take me to do this animation. I don't even know how much to charge for this animation. And, that can be a headache as well when you're just starting out, especially when not that many people are animating. The only other animators I knew was like Coretta Singer, who's a 3D animator. And a few 2D animators around at the time worked at GSW, and it's not like I had a direct link to go and contact them at the time to say, hey, how much should I charge? And then worse, they're a company. They most likely won't tell me how much they charge, right? In fact, I don't even think they were around at that time, to be honest, now that I think back. Anyway, did the animation, which was, it was called Goat Island, right? And basically, it's these two lizards that are in a tree, enjoying life, enjoying nature. And some construction workers and a politician come and they're just mowing down all of the trees and on the island. And, this was around the time when Jamaica wanted to turn Goat Island into a transshipment hub. And people didn't want the natural environment destroyed because it's home to a lot of iguana and other creatures that if you destroy it, you kind of destroy, their ecosystem. And it did really well for Jamaica Environment Trust. So they ended up hiring me again for the Another Tip Jamaica campaign. And they've hired me for Another Tip Jamaica campaign for a number of years. And so that's where the animation, career was born. And I got animation after animation from different companies, real estate board, Ministry of Labor, Ministry of Justice, and a couple others. Got a chance to work on a project called Agwe, which was a propeller JAFTA Propeller funded project, which is a really lovely animation that UE students, UTech students, VTDI students got a chance to work on. And it's aired on TVJ. I had created my first animated short called Abiko and the Maroons, which won several awards, both locally and overseas. And, became a part of the Jamaica Animation Nation Network simply to try to help other animators to kind of find their footing, network with others, because it was really hard to network with animators back then because you didn't know who an animator was, you didn't know where to find them. Even today at career days, you barely see animators, at career days. And that's something that I want to change. But that's the backstory. What I'll say is that, I would say people ask me this question all the while: do you need a degree to do animation? And I tell people all the while, no, you don't. You don't need a degree. You don't need a traditional education to do animation. So they were like, so what would be the point of me doing a degree? And I would say to them, well, look, here's the thing about it. With a degree, it's structured, right? And structure is good in the sense that all the information that you need to know about animation is already online. It's on YouTube. But there's so much information out there. There's so much good information. There's so much bad information. You don't know where to start and you don't know where to stop, right? You don't know what's important, what's not important. You don't know what to practice in what sequence. It can be very convoluted, right? It can be very, what's the word? Intimidating. What's that? Oh, thought that was a comment or question, right? It can be very, very intimidating. And, I find that in an education system, they have created the program in such a way that you progress from a starting point where you get a good base, and then you build on top of that base so that by the time you're finished with your education, right, you have a very good foundation to start from. Yes, you might be looking and saying, yeah, but I'm not producing the cool stuff that other people are producing and all of that jazz, but you're going to find in the long run that it still makes a big difference to have that structural foundation, right? Because what happens is that when you're in school, your teachers force you to do things that you would avoid if you were teaching yourself animation, right? When I was teaching myself animation, there were a lot of things that I would avoid because, like, boy, that's too hard, and I wish I never avoided them, right? Some of these things I'm still trying to catch up with now. The other thing with education is the networking. Like I said, for me, the networking, and Rasheen can tell you, networking came from being online and you happen to meet an animator and you try to see how we can link and how we can connect. And, even just trying to get into the broader industry, you're trying to figure out, who do I need to connect with? How do I connect with them? It's not easy to connect with strangers that way. But when you go to school with people, it's a big difference, with my university days. To this day, I'll see people that I went to university with, and these people own companies now. They're, doing big projects, etc. And, when you see them, immediately, they want to catch up, find out what you're up to, and, they want to help. They want to help. They want to collaborate, etc. A lot of the people that you guys go to school with now, 10, 15 years from now, you guys are going to be collaborating, right? Some of you are going to be working at big companies. Some of you may go overseas and work at studios. Some of you may work at studios out here or start your own studio, right? But the whole point is that because you guys came up together, worked together, you already know how you work, right? You already know that person's work ethic. You don't have to guess. And, you look forward to working with each other. Again, it's very difficult to do that when you don't know the person that well. You're kind of just hoping and praying that this works out when you're just out there in the wilderness. So degree, or I should say education, helps in that respect. I recently went back into doing, education, got my diploma in education back in, I think it was 2018 or something like that, and just completed a master's in media management. And I can tell you those persons that I did the master's with, they're like extended family now, and they're the type of people who, because they work in different places, have different skill sets, I call on them or they call on me all the while for, something that they need or something that I need that I can't get without some kind of links. And networking is about creating links, and links are extremely important. You'd be surprised how you can usurp very slow systems or inefficient systems or ineffective systems by just working through your network. I don't know if there's anything specific you guys want me to touch on, or if you have any questions so far that I could probably start answering, before continuing into oblivion. Anything? No? All right, well, if nothing, all right, so let me continue then. Right, so, oh wait, sir, I'm in a similar position doing comp-sci, but also wanting to do animation. Okay, Daniel Eccleston, name sounds familiar. So that's an interesting point that you made. You're in computer science, also wanting to do animation. And it's an interesting point that you make, simply because I have been tempted to go back into computer science. I've been tempted to go back into programming, quite a lot, but I'm just not enthused by programming applications. But one of the things that I've been learning over the years and definitely want to get into is like Unity, right? Development in Unity. And if I'm developing apps for my animated series to kind of support that animated series, beyond just watching it. Because these days, people don't want just a passive experience where you just sit and watch a story. They want to interact with the story. They want to change the course of the story. And, computer science does offer a lot of possibilities. Every animation software you can think of, at least any animation software that's considered professional animation software, there is a scripting component to it. Maya has a scripting language. Blender uses scripting, Toon Boom, Moho Pro, etc. And they use it to create, additional modules. They use it to automate some of the animation techniques. So you could still mix computer science and animation. Even worse now that we're getting into virtual reality and AR, etc. There are definite opportunities to combine computer science and animation, even from the perspective of game development, right? Honestly, that's one of the things that I really reason why I really wanted to bring back some of the coding is to get into game development. You say here, you could even make your own animation software. Yeah, you could make your own animation software. In fact, I know a gentleman who I think teaches at UTech. He's actually making his own animation software. It's a +1 to what Kevin is saying. Lots of interest in AR, VR. For students doing animation, where do you think is the best for them to get hands-on work/internship opportunities? All right, cool. All right, so first off, when it comes to hands-on opportunities, I definitely say, work on your own stuff, work on your own ideas, work on your friends' ideas, right? The reason why I single that out is because that's the easiest place to start, right? It's the easiest place to start because, like I said, in me doing my own animated projects, that's how I got work, right? By just showing my animation projects to the world, right? But beyond that, if you want to actually get experience in a studio, you still have to do stuff on your own because studio space is very competitive these days, right? As you can imagine, the animation community is small, right? It's very, very small. If you think about all of the animations you watch on TV, you probably know all of these studios by heart. You're not seeing studios jump up every day that you've never heard of before. But there are students graduating every year from animation programs, so the competition is stiff. So when you apply to these studios, they want to see your portfolio. You know, they really, really, really want to see your portfolio. And the stronger your portfolio is, the better the studio that you can get into. I know, if we're looking locally, we can talk about C-Mills. C-Mills is a guy who has an animation studio. From time to time, I know he takes on employees and interns. There's Listen Me Caribbean. Listen Me Caribbean does amazing work. If you guys don't know about Listen Me Caribbean, you need to get to know Listen Me Caribbean. They just put out a teaser for Lovers Leap. If you go to loversleapanimation.com, you'll see what that looks like. It's amazing. You know, seeing that, I know I have some work to do. Night Vision Media, they take on interns. I just recently started my company, Imagine Culture. Not quite ready to take on interns yet, but I'm getting there. There used to be GSW, but they're not around anymore. Is there anybody else locally? There are other places locally. If you go to animationjamaica.com, there's a list of local studios. So if you go to animationjamaica.com, spelled out, I think somewhere on the right-hand side, a few scrolls down, you'll see a list of animation studios. So those would be your local options. Marketing firms often take animators as well. The challenge with marketing firms is that they are not animators, so they can be sometimes unreasonable with their requests. And another issue that I have with the local industry, which is just something that we have to continue to educate them. They don't know the difference between an animation, an illustration, or a comic. So there's a lot of times when they will ask you for an animation and they really mean they want an illustration, or they really mean they want a comic. So it can be frustrating. Within the region now, there is Full Circle, there is let me wait on this truck to pass. There's Malfinis Studios in St. Lucia, Full Circle in Trinidad. I think there are about 3 studios in Trinidad. I don't remember all of the names right now. So, sir, I think my high school animation and game design teacher was working with you. Oh, Adrian White, possibly? Yeah, you're with animation. Okay, yes. He does. So internationally now, well, there's a plethora of places. There's Mercury Studios in Canada, Mercury Studios. In fact, the animation supervisor at Mercury Studios is a Jamaican. And Mercury Studios does Hilda. They do, what else they do? Oh gosh, the names of those animations are escaping me. But if you search for Mercury Filmworks, you will see all of the stuff that they produce, and most likely you've watched at least 3 of their titles. There is, oh God, what's the name of Ricardo's studio? Can't remember it now. But there are lots of studios. In fact, what I would say to you is there's a website called animationjobs.com. And on animationjobs.com, you will see when big companies overseas are posting jobs. And the Animation Jamaica often posts jobs on their job board as well, whenever jobs are available, that is. But you will see jobs that are being offered all over the world. You see the requirements for those jobs. You'll see whether those jobs are remote or you have to be in the country, etc. So there are a plethora of places you can look for jobs. Sir, could you provide a link to your business social media for the animation studios that work with you? All right, I will do that. Like I said, I just started my company, so not everything is sorted out yet. I think I just created the Instagram and Facebook, which would be Imagine Culture. Let me just, there's probably nothing there at the moment, because like I said, just started, but that would be it for future reference. And yes, film festivals are a great way to gain traction. In fact, I can definitely, oh, another thing that I can tell you that, two things. I want to tell you another thing that my degree has helped with, as well as work experience has helped with. And I really want to talk about this simply because a lot of people feel like they don't need work experience. So because your degree forces you to present and speak properly and write properly and, you know, understand how to be professional, that has taken me a long way, right? It's taken me a long way because, yeah, as animators, we communicate in a very, you know, down to earth way. But in our line of work, especially the goals I have, which are to create animated series and animated movies, you have to pitch a lot to people. And the people that you're pitching to are not animators, they're business people. And they respond, yes, they do want you to feel like an animator, but at the same time, you have to communicate in a professional manner. If they're asking you for a document, that document cannot be filled with grammatical errors and spelling errors and sound professional and not, you know, meet, you know, like when you do proposal writing, yeah, proposal writing is very important when you're asking for money. And yeah, honestly, going through a degree, I don't think I would have ever chosen to learn proposal writing on my own, you know, so that came in very handy. And with work experience is another thing that teaches you emotional intelligence. It teaches you, again, another layer of professionalism, customer service. It teaches you how to connect with different departments. As animators, we tend to be very solo minded. You know, we tend to just think about ourselves. We tend to be very critical of others, critical of ourselves, etc. We don't like to work in teams, even though animation is a team sport. But even within teams, we tend to be this, you know, every man for himself kind of thing. You know, I want to design it that way. I don't like how that person designed it, etc. When you are in a work environment, you learn that, hey, it's not about you, it's about the team, right? Everybody needs to achieve this thing together. And that's how a studio works as well. When you work for a studio, you can't decide that, hey, you know, I don't really like the South Park designs. How about we convert Kenny and his friends into an anime style, right? The studio is not going to have that. You know, you're hired there to continue their IP. So, you know, you have to basically just abide by the rules and follow the formula, right? And that's something that, you know, you kind of get to understand better when you work in a work environment, and bringing that professionalism to your own your work practice, you know, goes a long way. You know, that discipline of getting up every day and working till a certain amount of time, as opposed to getting up when you feel like, and that sort of thing. But film festivals now, film festival experience wise, film festivals are very key to getting your name out there. And I mean, one of the things that I've come to learn is when you engage in a process or you engage in a program, it is best to explore it as fully as possible. And what I mean by that is, for example, in a film festival, it's great to just go on the film festival page, like Film Freeway. I recommend Film Freeway to anybody who wants to engage in the film festival circuit. But don't just send your films, right? Do not just send your films. If there's anything that we must learn from, say, social media, for example, is to be social, right? That's the thing about networking. You have to be social. And in some cases, it helps when you email the festival and say, hey, I'm thinking of submitting to your festival. Do you take Jamaican content from Jamaica? How long is your content, or how short can the content be? And just engaging with them, it allows them, gives them an opportunity to get to know you, right? And they kind of look out for your work. The other thing is, if you can get to go to the festival, that's another level that, you know, it takes you. And I would say when you're looking at festivals, look at the festival from the standpoint of not, you know, do I win a money prize, or do I stand a good chance of winning, etc. Yes, you do want to take that into consideration, but you also want to look at what are the types of people this film festival attracts, right? Because that can be of immense benefit. Right now, some friends of mine are at the Pan-African Film Festival screening a film, and they had to choose between going to that film festival that they would have to fork money out of their pockets to pay, fly to LA to go to that festival, fly to LA and put themselves up, or to go to a film market in Germany called Berlinale, which is one of the biggest film markets in the world, right? That would have been paid for by Jampro. And I remember when the filmmaker said to me that, boy, she's leaning towards Pan-African Film Festival, but she was being advised to go to Berlinale because, hey, it's all expense paid. And I was just like, nah, don't go to Berlinale, go to Pan-African Film Festival. You're not going to regret it. And I said that on the basis of the type of people that go to Pan-African Film Festival. Like some really big, Black movie stars frequent that festival. There are big producers frequenting that festival. People who are interested in the type of work that we do. And in going there, they get to see you face to face. And when they get to see you face to face, you build a rapport with them, you build connections with them. They want to work with you. And it just so happened when they went up there, they met tons of Jamaicans that work in LA, right? Some of them making some amazing movies. And, just by making that connection, these people are now interested in seeing their film. And after seeing their film, they want to engage, they're exchanging numbers, they want to give back, etc. And that is going to be a huge bridge for them to get proper distribution for their content and proper support for their content. Not saying that Berlinale wouldn't, but it's a little harder with Berlinale because one of the problems with like going to Europe is I've pitched in many circles, I've pitched in Jamaica, in Trinidad, in Europe, in US, etc. And one of the problems that I've consistently found, and it's not just me one, when you go to countries that are a bit more Eurocentric or North American, etc., what you find is that because they don't quite fully understand our culture, even though they love our culture, because they don't quite understand our culture, they're apprehensive about greenlighting our projects, right? And I say that to say the last thing that I pitched is a series about a brother and sister who they live in the countryside in Jamaica with their mother, who's a farmer, an entrepreneur, and they love helping people in the neighborhood. They love helping them with any problems they have. The only problem is they're just 5 years old. And as you can imagine, being 5 years old, there's so much you can help with and no more. But they're determined to help. They always end up creating a mess, and then they always have to work together to fix that mess, right? And in the end, they always end up helping whoever, even if it's accidentally. And the first question I get asked is, so, how are you going to make people want to see an animation about something in Jamaica? Now, my thing is why that is a big red flag to me is, had I not mentioned countryside in Jamaica, he would have never asked that question, right? And the reason why that is important is because it's important for us to tell universal stories that still have cultural ties to our country, right? Because if you look at the animations that are getting very popular these days, they're filled with, cultural ties to their specific country. We love anime, and anime is very entrenched in Japanese culture. Song of the Sea from Ireland is very entrenched in Irish culture. Seis Manos, what's that other thing? That Coco, what else is there? Anything that Guillermo del Toro does is very entrenched in Spanish culture. And people can't get enough of Guillermo del Toro's work, right? Because people want to see something new. But the problem is that a lot of investors, they're looking at things from the perspective of what is safe to invest in, And the problem with what is safe to invest in is that it results in everything feeling the same. So when you're watching Hollywood stuff, you're constantly like, why do I feel like I've seen this before? Why is it Hollywood is running out of ideas? Why is it another sequel? yo, they've done this before, etc., etc., etc. And it's a case of, it's not even a mediocrity sales, you know, Daniel. It's more a case of this formula worked once, so we're betting it will work again. Because guess what? Every time we put out a Fast and Furious movie, people spend the money to watch it, you know, even though it ain't all that great. But you know, that's the thing about it. But the world is looking for new and fresh things. Film festivals are a great place to explore those new and fresh things. A lot of people get discovered at festivals, and it helps to branch out your career. You know, you go to these festivals, you'd be surprised how many people are looking for animators, right? And it could be your ticket into working for a studio, because a lot of studios scout at some of these festivals, especially the animation festivals. Anyway, I'm gonna just close it off here. I don't know if anybody has any other questions, but yeah, that's it from me. Hopefully this talk was useful. Let's see here. Sir, would making 3D animations like ads be a good idea in Jamaica? I don't know if there's any demand for that. There is demand for it. Like Coretta Singer, for example, used to make most of her money off of doing 3D commercials. Same with Liquid Light Digital, and a couple of others. So yes, the only challenge with 3D animated commercials in Jamaica is how long 3D animation takes to render. And clients tend to have a lot of changes. So if you can't make those changes quickly enough, it's a problem. The good thing is that Unreal Engine is making things a lot faster, especially where environments are concerned. And if you develop a pipeline that can, you know, work for this space, yeah. Let's see here. I'm interested in doing full stack development. Okay. However, I'm lacking experience. Do you know any websites that provide internships? That's a tough one because I'm not in that space. There are quite a few, you know, developers out here. I can't point to them off the top of my head. I'd probably have to ask a few friends who are still in that realm. But yeah, sorry, I can't give you any direct answer for that one. Yeah, so Kingston is dead. Kingston no longer exists. That was a part of our project, and that project came to a close a few years ago. And while the Kingston name still exists, nobody has taken on the event because it's an extremely expensive event to host. You know, and unless somebody's going to tell people how to, you know. Oh yes, Code Academy is actually pretty good. Code Academy is very, very good. Thanks for reminding me about that. In fact, I used to use Code Academy back in the day. Am I missing any questions?
Yes, sir. I have a couple general questions before we go. One was, as a professional, what would be your best advice for up and coming animators?
For up and coming animators, my thing is I'm always saying, yo, create your own content. And the reason I say that is very simple. When you work for clients, you're giving them their vision, and their vision is not always what you will be proud of, right? And nothing is wrong with that because you're hired for a reason. You know, if somebody calls me over to hammer a nail, and when I come over, I say, hey, you know, this and that also need to fix. If they say, look, I just want you to hammer the nail, then I'm there to hammer the nail. But that's not work that I'm going to be proud of. I'm not going to say, hey, you know, I hammered a nail in that house the other day. I'm so proud of it. No, create your own projects. If you have an idea for something, even if it's a commercial, if you see something that you say you want to do a commercial for this, create it, because your portfolio is your strength, right? Like resumes, I still advise that you have a resume, but I guarantee you your resume is not going to get you as much work as your portfolio will. When people ask me if I know an animator or I know an illustrator or I know XYZ, they never ask me for a resume. They always say, can you send me their portfolio?
Okay. Second question. After, or let's say after you graduate, what would be the first step to starting my career? So I have my portfolio, I have all that like put down. Where do I go from there?
All right, cool. What I would say to you is, I mean, it depends. Do you want a job?
Yeah, I personally I'd start the freelancing, but like when we're ready to start, if I'm ready to like join a studio, how would I go about doing that?
All right, so same old way is apply for the jobs at the different studios. That's the first thing. But the other thing that I would say to you is network, right? Network is your strength. Join associations, join Jan, join ASIFA Hollywood, um, join networks on social media that groups that are pertain to animation, and start talking to people. If you see where there is an online event that has to do with animation, online webinars, online workshops, online festivals, online marketplaces, join those things. And when you join those things, actually network with people. Don't just go and sit down and watch. Don't just go and ask the presenter questions. One of the things that I saw happening during the pandemic, and it really does work because I did end up talking to a lot of prospects through that, is in the chats, people will share their socials, they'll share their LinkedIn, they will, express what they're working on. And, literally legit, when you go in your LinkedIn, they actually message you and you start talking and having conversation and so on and so forth. Because the thing is, the wider your network is the easier you can get work, because you're knowing more people in the industry that's connecting you more directly to what you need, and they're seeing what you do. If you go to these events and you're just silent in the chats, nobody knows you exist. If you avoid associations, nobody knows you exist. If you just depend on, I'm just going to post on Instagram, your friends may know you exist, but nobody's going to just happen upon your page. Maybe by accident, but not intentionally. So you want to expose yourself as much as possible, apply for jobs, and make it known what you do and what type of job you want. I see people successfully posting that, hey, I'm a 2D illustrator, blah, 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 blah. I am open for hire, etc., etc. Because one of the things we have to bear in mind is it's not on somebody's mind every single hour of the day that, oh, I need an animator. Let me go look for an animator. A lot of times they need an animator. It's in the back of their mind. And it's when they're on LinkedIn or when they're on Instagram, they see someone make a post saying, hey, you want attractive 3D animated commercials, contact me, etc. And they'll contact you because they do need that. That's on their checklist to check off. So I would say explore all avenues. I don't have a magic trick for you to, as soon as you walk out of university, get a job. All I have for you is strategies that will increase your likelihood of getting a job.
Okay, thank you, sir.
If you have a studio that you're dead set at working, get in contact with them and find out what kind of portfolio they're looking for, tailor their, yes, good point. And let me add to that. So I teach a course called Portfolio Development, Portfolio Development 1 and 2. And one of the things that, in that course, we always stress is look for the job you want, right? So if you want to be a concept artist, for example, look at the concept artists that you like and say, oh, I want to be like that someday. Somebody that you truly believe you can be like that someday, or close to her. And look at your own work and be honest with your own work, or ask somebody that you think is honest to compare your work to theirs, so you can determine how much you need to catch up and develop a plan to catch up. How often are you going to practice? What are you going to intentionally practice, etc. And look for places that need concept artists. And what you can start doing, like, here's a trick. when you watch an animation, right? And this goes for animators and filmmakers. This is one of the things that they say to you all the while. Stay and watch the credits. A lot of people don't watch the credits. People work hard on these things. Film is hard, animation is hard, right? You're spending months on this project. Watch the credits. And you see, when you watch the credits, look for the name of the person with the job role that you want. Look them up, right? Look up the producers and the production managers and supervisors, etc. Find them on social media, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, wherever they are. Find them and start commenting on their posts. I do not advise you to go in their DMs and say, hey, I'm an animator, I'm looking at a job, because that's equivalent to begging. You don't want to do that because they get those messages all the time. What you want to do is you want to comment on their post and be genuine with it. Don't just go, oh, this is cool. You know, actually make a comment that, you know, makes sense. It shows that you actually appreciate the art and stuff. And after a while of messaging them, because they get to know you, then you can say, maybe a couple of weeks or months after, you can say, hey, I'm interested in being a concept artist, you know. I would love some advice, or could you check out my work and tell me what I need to work on? And then you'd be surprised how you get to work at your dream place by doing that. All right, so I don't see any more questions, so I think we can end it here.
Thank you for coming, Mr. Jackson.
All right, thank you very much for having me. Let me just, where is this video? Oh, there we go.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Jackson. It was well appreciated, and as you can see by the chat, the students were surely taking in the information. Our next presenter, well, on the flyer, it would have said that our applied artificial intelligence presenter will be Mr. Tyrone Edwards. However, unfortunately, due to unforeseen circumstances, he's not able to be here today. Therefore, the person presenting for applied artificial intelligence is Mr. Percival Roberts. Now, Mr. Roberts is a KC graduate, where he was a senior prefect. He's also a former drums and parade sergeant major, and he is the current applied artificial intelligence program representative. So please help me in welcoming him to present on AAI today.
Thank you for that introduction, Tiana. Good evening, everyone. Can you all just confirm that you are able to hear me properly?
Yes, we are.
Yes, yes.
Okay, great. So let me share my screen and I'll start to present. Once you're seeing the screen, please just confirm with me so I can start.
We're seeing it.
Okay, great. So today we'll be looking at artificial intelligence, but before I begin, I'd like to say that AI, or AAI as it's called, is a new program to the university. It started this semester, so last month, January. So it's a very, very, very new program. And those of you who may be interested after my presentation, if you feel like, you know, this may be a degree that you're interested in or a degree that you would like to pursue, then there will be, well, you can transfer your program by visiting your program office and asking for the transfer form, but it has to be done 6 weeks prior to the new academic session or the new academic semester. So for those of you who may be interested in AI or will say, hey, I want to do this program, then that's how you can go about doing it. So with that being said, let me start officially. So for this presentation, we'll simply be looking at an overview, presenting what is an AI, and who pioneered the term, the different categories of artificial intelligence, what will the degree allow you to do, how can you get started as someone who isn't necessarily pursuing the degree, but you maybe have some interest in it and you're like, okay, this is a degree or this is something that I might want to do to assist my business or just for personal interest. Then we're looking at some resources, free resources, of course, since most of us here are students and aren't working. So, you can have something to look at, say, okay, boom, I can get some experience doing this, or maybe I can just get some material to supplement what I am learning in class. And then finally, we look at some career opportunities. So the first thing we'll be doing is to look at the overview of artificial intelligence. So as you all may know, AI is a buzzword right now. Everyone is talking about it. And I'm sure you've all heard of ChatGPT, which we will go to in a moment. So AI is one of the fastest growing fields in technology today, and it has begun to transform our lives in many significant ways, right? If you can think of how AI has impacted you, whether it's by your personal life or through school, then you can just go ahead and make some comments in the chat. I will be looking at them periodically to just see what's going on and provide some feedback there. So artificial intelligence, or AI as it is called, is a field of computer science that is concerned with the development of intelligent machines that can learn from experience and perform tasks that usually require human experience or human intelligence rather. So its roots were first seen from way back in the 20th century from a guy called Alan Turing. Alan Turing. So I'm not sure if you've ever heard his name. If you are a computer science student, then the chances are you'll probably hear of programming languages, being Turing complete. And I'll just speak about that shortly. Let's say I have a question. Such as saying I need to run for the call. Okay, that's a fun. All right, so as I said earlier, AI came about from this Alan Turing guy. He was really and truly a logician, or you can look at, well, he was referred to as a logician, but he was actually a mathematician. And he gave speeches in London, 1947, speaking about the possibility of a machine that could learn from experiences and adapting to different changes and circumstances. He also said that the machine's ability to do so would heavily be reliant on the instructions provided for it, and that the machine also had various mechanisms to facilitate this kind of learning. So when referring to artificial intelligence, there are, well, really and truly, there are a lot of different categories. However, for this presentation, we'll just be looking at a few, and as I go along, I will also mention some more categories. So the first category we'll be looking at is reactive machines. So a reactive machine simply refers to a form of AI that has no, sorry, they have no memory and they're only good at performing a specific task. So instead of reading everything that's on the slide, I'll just give you a brief example to make it a bit more concise. A great example of a reactive machine would be something like the recommendation engine on Amazon. So has anyone here ever shopped on Amazon before? Just raise your hand. Ever shopped on Amazon? Right. So a few hands are being raised. So when you've shopped on Amazon, I'm sure you'd have realized that, let's say you buy a headphone, right? And you buy a headphone from Beats. Then all of a sudden you go back on Amazon and then you see where they're asking you to purchase another item saying, oh, people who bought this headphone that you bought have also bought this other item. So that's just one example of reactive machines. And I'm sure you can think of many others. But yeah, that's typically how they work. So they just form a web of patterns in some sense based on the input that is given to them. And then they produce an output saying, hey, this may be likely. So we're just going to suggest that to you. The next type of artificial intelligence we can look at is limited memory. And a limited memory AI is a bit more complex than the previous category mentioned. Whereas in the previous category, it only sticks to one specific task. With limited memory, artificial intelligence, they are broadened in some sense, and they have the ability to learn via neurons, neuron similar to your brain. They have the ability to learn on past experiences and develop and get more intelligent. For example, ChatGPT and well, ChatGPT is one example, but also these neurons aren't just limited to what you ask them as, say, putting in standard input via typing on a computer. We can also find examples of these types of AI in self-driving cars, and I'm sure we all know about the Tesla self-driving cars. So to attempt to create something like that, you would have to have, well, obviously a deep understanding and a deep knowledge of how neural networks work and so on. But you'll also have to have a deep understanding of physics and mathematics and lasers in general. So you'd have to learn a bunch of stuff and then put those knowledge and those technologies together to be able to create something as sophisticated as what I just mentioned. Now, the other type we'll be looking at is more theoretical in nature. And the reason why is because it doesn't actually exist as of yet. This theory of mind, AI, as I am about to mention, is what people would typically refer to as the apocalypse. This is where people start to fear artificial intelligence, right? This is a type of AI that is saying, hey, look, let's go back. They have the potential to say, right, based on my interactions with you, the AI could say, the AI could analyze certain features about me and then say, okay, based on his gestures or his emotions, then he is projecting this type of feeling towards someone else. So in some sense, a theory of mind, artificial intelligence is close to being what is called, or what is noted as being sentient. And then right after that, we have a self-awareness AI, which would in some sense be an evolution to the theory of mind AI, where it goes a step further and has full cognitive awareness and can actually feel emotions and be conscious of itself. So far, are there any questions? Is anyone not sure what I'm speaking on? Anything you'd like for me to clear up about artificial intelligence? Or should I move on? Okay, take it that I have no questions. So what can you do with a degree in artificial intelligence? Or rather, how can doing a degree in AI benefit you? So typically, doing a degree in AI will one enable you of different programming languages and tools, and also it will give you the capacity to learn and build logic using mathematics to cultivate different categories of artificial intelligence. Now, how can you get started in learning AI? The easiest way is through programming. So for the languages, of course, there are many different programming languages that you can use to learn AI, but typically I would suggest using one of the following, either Python, Java, or C++. Python would be considered the best choice because one, the language is very easy to learn. It reads almost like English. And two, it has a large community. Three, it has a lot of libraries and modules built for you to use AI. And there's also great support for AI in general when using Python. Java, on the other hand, you can use Java similar to how you'd use Python for AI based on the different libraries and support that it has. However, Java is a bit more complex to learn than Python. Like very complex. The difference between them is almost night and day. And then Java and C++ now kind of fall into the same category as it relates to complexity. So if you ever want to learn some artificial intelligence or say, hey, do something simple in AI, then you can always look at Python to learn some artificial intelligence. Also, I think this would be a great time for me to mention that I'll be doing a crash course in some sense on Python this Saturday at 6 to 8 p.m. For those interested, you can just send me a private message and I will send you the link for that meeting. And we'll essentially be going from the basics of Python to the more advanced topics. And then afterwards, if you guys want to venture out on your own, then you can go ahead and learn how to implement some artificial intelligence with the use of the Python programming language. Now, in addition to the various programming tools that you would need, you also need mathematics. It's very important because artificial intelligence is essentially math, right? The various algorithms that you're going to write are in some sense math dependent. And the topics you need to learn are algebra, statistics, calculus. Obviously, there are more topics that you can learn, but I believe that these topics listed here would have given you the better, or would give you the advantage over some student who maybe doesn't know them. All right, someone just messaged me. I'll get to you shortly, as soon as I finish this presentation. So for resources, there's always, and I believe someone mentioned it earlier when asking to learn about full stack development. There are a plethora of resources available online via Google and YouTube. So all you have to do really and truly is go on Google or YouTube and just type in full stack development. My favorite place is YouTube, free code camp to be exact. They have a wonderful channel where you can learn anything programming and math related. So it depends on what programming language you are interested. Let's say, for example, JavaScript. I believe they have a full stack development course for JavaScript that covers both front end and back end. They have a 31 or 33-hour long course on C++ for those who are interested in C++ and they want to do a bit of game development and so on. They have courses on Java. They have courses on pretty much anything you can think about math-wise and programming-wise. Then next up, we actually have GitHub, which is a website or an archive used to collect where programmers can actually store their code in the cloud and collaborate with others. Now, the good thing about GitHub is that it's open source. And when I say open source, I mean everyone is available to go on, unless something is private, of course. So you can find really great examples of people working on projects in artificial intelligence and are just programming in general. And you also have the ability to contribute to those projects in order to learn what those projects entail and to better yourself on programming. Next up, we have Education by Google AI, which is like our exercises and resource center. So you can go there, you can practice some AI and learn more. And then we have ChatGPT, which is a natural language processing model or an NLP model. And it simply works by taking inputs, producing output based on the data it was trained. Up to this day, I believe ChatGPT was trained on like 1 billion different parameters of data. So you can use it to help you write code, write essays, write anything you can truly imagine. It's only limited to your imagination. So for those who are interested, ChatGPT, you can visit OpenAI, ChatGPT, Education, Google AI, same thing. GitHub, just type in GitHub, and Free Code Camp, type in Free Code Camp. Also, for Free Code Camp, you do have the ability to become certified in your course of choice. So Mr. McPherson, who was on earlier, spoke about his experience in computer information systems. I know they have a certification for that. You can also get certified in data analysis for AI. You can get certified in full stack development, JavaScript, and a few other areas that I'm not sure off the top of my head, but you just have to visit and you can see for yourself. And that should be able to give you somewhat of a path to go on. And then lastly, we'll be looking at some career paths or some possible career paths you can undertake as a artificial intelligence graduate. So first up, we have researcher. It would also be a data scientist, a machine learning engineer, and a data analyst. Sorry. Now, obviously, there are other career paths that you can take, but these are some of the most common or the most known paths. For those of you who are interested in doing robotics, learning about computer vision, supervised, unsupervised, reinforced learning, creating your own virtual assistant, something like Amazon or Siri, then you would be able to do so via learning about artificial intelligence. And as I said earlier, if anyone has any questions, you are free to go ahead and ask me.
Oh, sir, someone asked a question in the chat, Mr. Grant.
Yeah, I saw the question. I was reading it. So for someone who isn't necessarily mathematically inclined, as I said, it plays a big role. However, as well, you can't, the thing is, you can practice with AI without being too mathematically inclined. However, I think that as time goes on, then it would be great to say, all right, I have the programming down. Let me figure out the math. Because the thing is, and this is why I say it's best to use Python if you really want to get into AI initially. Because the thing is, Python has a lot of built-in modules or built-in libraries or even libraries that you can import to do the math for you. For example, NumPy. So a lot of times people would say, okay, I don't necessarily know how to do this, but then let me just import a module or a library to do it for me. So in that case, you have something to solve the problem where you necessarily would fail. So if you don't know how, or if you're not too mathematically inclined, but you say, hey, you know, I like AI, I really want to do it, I'll push myself, then you just continue to focus on the programming first and then try to get the math later. As I said, the resources, Google, YouTube. On YouTube, you have Khan Academy, Free Code Camp, the Organic Chemistry Tutor. I think I'm missing something else. I'm not sure what I'm missing, but yeah, those are some great places that you can learn. Also, Free Code Camp, I know they offer a math programming course that blends mathematics with programming, and I believe it is done in the Python programming language. So you're like, okay, you know, you're learning math, but then you want to implement it in code. You could also use that video as a stepping stone to learn. Additionally, you can use Harvard free course to learn some math as well, because Harvard has a link. I'm not sure what the link is, but if you type it in Google, free Harvard courses, then you'll be able to see a myriad of different courses that Harvard University offers you that you can do online at your own pace for completely free. So I hope that answered your question. Anyone else? All right, I don't think I have any more questions. So what I will do, I'll send my number in the chat for those who message me. So it's 806-842-808. For those who are interested, sorry, you can message me about the run through for Python this Saturday, and I'll send you the link and tell you what you can expect. So there's my number. Let's go ahead and shoot me a message. AI for game dev. That's actually pretty interesting. So as it relates to that, there is a gaming degree at UTech, but let's say you don't want to go that route. Then what I would suggest is that while you are learning a software like Unity or Unreal Engine, then you should learn the scripting language used by that engine instead of just using the visual editor. And then based on what you want to accomplish, let's say, for example, you want to have an enemy attack you once you're in a certain range of the enemy, and you learn the basics of whatever language you are using, for example, C++, Java, then you should be able to complete that quite easily. In a sense that it wouldn't be as difficult as, let's say, sorting and cleaning through billions of data that you would traditionally do when you're working with AI or creating like a self-driving car or a robot or something of that sort. I'm not saying that it's not difficult to do in game, or I'm not saying that game development, artificial intelligence isn't difficult or important. However, certain things that you might want to do may well boil down to using the basics of the language. For example, using conditional statements or using loops. So I hope that answered your question. See, one more. Okay, you're welcome. Is there any more questions? Okay, no. All right, let me just stop sharing. So that would conclude my presentation. As I said, if anyone has any questions, please feel free to reach out to me and I'll do my best to answer you as soon as possible. All right, someone asked me about Python for web development. If you want to learn Python for web development, I'd say learn a framework like Django or Flask. The best place, Free Code Camp. They have a dedicated video to Django, I believe, and I think they have one for Flask as well. So you could check them out for that. Just go on YouTube, type in Free Code Camp Django course, and Django is spelled Django, I believe. Yeah. So you can check them out and see how good that is for you. Yeah, so I hope someone or a few people learned something from my presentation today. And thank you all for listening. Have a wonderful evening.
Okay. Ooh. Thank you so much. First of all, I know you piqued the interest of a lot of students into AAI. We really appreciate your in-depth presentation. And of course, another thank you to all the presenters. We appreciate you all coming up today. And of course, the students that came, especially those that stuck around to the end, those that were here from the beginning. I thank you all for coming out. Please support our other events for Skit Week. Tomorrow we have our Get to Know Your Council members. You can tune in on IG. And on Friday, we're having our face-to-face games day starting at 2 to ensure you're all on campus, ready to have some fun. And of course, Saturday is our online games day. Again, thank you all for coming out. Enjoy the rest of your day.